Let us talk about the simile today. What is a simile? Simile is a literary term where you use like or as to compare two different things and show a common quality between them. A simile is different from a simple comparison in that it usually compares two unrelated things. For example, she looks like you is a comparison, but not a simile. On the other hand, she smiles like the sun is a simile, as it compares a woman with something of a different kind, that is, the sun. A simile, then, is a figure of speech that compares two different things in an interesting way. The object of a simile is to spark an interesting connection in a reader's or listener's mind. A simile is one of the most common forms of figurative language, and examples of similes can be found just about anywhere, from poems to song lyrics and even in everyday conversations. Similes are used in literature to make writing more vivid and powerful. In everyday speech, they can be used to convey meaning quickly and effectively, as many commonly used expressions or idioms are similes. For example, when someone says he is as busy as a bee, it means he is working hard, as bees are known to be extremely busy. If someone says, I'm as snug as a bug in a rug, they mean that they feel very comfortable or cozy or are tucked up tight in bed. Similes, as I've already said, can make our language more descriptive and enjoyable. Writers, poets, and songwriters make use of similes often to add depth and emphasize what they are trying to convey to the reader or listener. Similes can be funny, serious, mean, or creative, and they are frequently used in literature, slogans, advertisements, songs. Let us uh, read some of the well known similes that you often hear. We often say for somebody, as cute as a kitten, or for something as light as a feather, as blind as a bat, as strong as an ox, as brave as a lion, as cold as ice, as common as dirt. What we are doing is we are comparing one thing to the other. We use these expressions to compare one thing with a different thing. As cool as a cucumber, as hard as nails, as hot as hell, as innocent as a lamb, as tall as a giraffe. Somebody who's very tall, we say he's as tall as a giraffe. As thin as a rake, somebody who's very thin. As tough as nails, as white as a ghost, as sweet as sugar, as black as coal, as deep as the ocean. There are many, many similes, but these are some of the few that are very common. Let us look at some of the examples from literature. For an example of simile in prose, read this excerpt from George Orwell's novel 1984. He sat as still as a mouse in the futile hope that whoever it was might go away after a single attempt. But no, The knocking was repeated. The worst thing of all would be to delay. His heart was thumping like a drum, but his face, from long habit, was probably expressionless. This passage, if you notice, uses two similes, as still as a mouse and thumping like a drum. He sat as still as a mouse, and later his heart was thumping like a drum. Comparing the fearful man to a mouse emphasizes both his stillness and his helplessness. Comparing a heartbeat to a drumbeat emphasizes its pounding due to fear. Similes create a much more evocative passage than literal alternatives such as he was afraid and his heart beat hard. Let us take a look at another example. For a poetic example of simile, read this excerpt from Christina Rossetti's poem, A Birthday. My heart is like a singing bird whose nest is in a watered shoot. My heart is like an apple tree whose boughs are bent with thick-set fruit. My heart is like a rainbow shell that paddles in a halcyon sea. My heart is gladder than all these, because my love is come to me. Rossetti uses simile 3 times in this section of the poem. Her heart is like a singing bird, is like an apple tree, and like a rainbow shell. Rossetti compares the heart to a joyful bird in a full nest, an apple tree full of fruit, and a beautiful shell in a peaceful sea, in order to poetically describe its joy, fullness, and peacefulness. Similes, then you notice, are an important tool that can make language more creative, descriptive, and entertaining. The mind thinks in images and associations, so similes are used to make stronger and more effective descriptions than if only adjectives or literal descriptions were used. They can stir up associated emotions, create new connections in the mind, and emphasize certain characteristics. Similes are almost essential to creative expression, from everyday speech to poetry, and give the reader a more vivid experience of the story, calling powerful images to mind.